Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Colin, you're watching Bug Out Overland, and on this episode, I'm going to show you how to install Rago Fabrication shackle hangers on your second or third gen Tacoma. Included with your Rago Fabrication shackle hanger kit, you can expect to find the following items. 2 beefier, way heavier duty powder coated hangers, 2 heavier duty shackles with poly bushings and grease points, 2 teardrop shaped washers, 2 diamond shaped cover plates, 2 grease fittings for your shackles, 4 3/4 inch stainless steel button head caps with washers, 2 zinc coated 5-inch lower shackle bolts with nuts and washers, and lastly 10 1.5-inch zinc coated bolts with nuts and washers for mounting your hangers onto your truck. Let's take a look at some of the tools I used to complete this project. You guys may have different preferences or variations of these tools that you prefer using, which is totally okay. This is just what I ended up using. Starting over here, we've got a 22mm socket, 3 different variations of a 19mm socket, a 9/32 socket, a 4mm Allen socket, a pair of vice grips, a 19mm wrench, a 1/4 inch ratchet, 3/8 inch ratchet, and a 1/2 inch ratchet, a 1/2 inch breaker bar, torque wrench, pry bar. Over here we've got a brass hammer, dead blow hammer, got a center punch, and then both a chisel tool and a punch tool as well. Here's the set of power tools I ended up using to complete this project. Starting over here, we've got a 1/2 inch impact, a good drill with a couple of really good 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch drill bits, a wire wheel, an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel and a flap disc, and I ended up using a hammer drill, which this will not be the first time you'll hear me say this in the video. This thing did not work well at all. I used it with a punch and a chisel bit, but if you have access to an air hammer with a punch and a chisel bit, that's gonna be a lot more preferred than using this. I'm just including this because I did end up using it in the project, but I highly recommend going with a different method, not this. I'm gonna start by jacking up the truck and removing the wheels. As always, be sure to set your handbrake and chock the front wheels. I prefer jacking up the truck at the rear differential, so I'm immediately countering the shock travel instead of jacking it one side at a time by the frame. I'm going to set the jack stands high enough where I can remove the wheels and leave the jack to adjust the axle height as needed. Once I have the wheels off, I'll set them underneath the truck's frame for added safety. It's okay to jack the truck up and remove the wheels on both sides, but to prevent any sort of misalignment, I recommend only working on one side at a time. Alright, let's go ahead and start with the installation. First things first, if you're carrying a spare tire underneath your truck, go ahead and drop that and get it out of the way, set it to the side, because we're going to be utilizing that space inside of there to remove those old hangers and install the new ones. I'm carrying my full-size spare on my rear bumper, so I don't have to worry about that. Secondly, I'm going to show you guys how to remove these leaf packs. You can probably get away with leaving them on partially, but I think for time's sake and just for the ease of it, I'm going to remove them completely and get them out of the way. Before I show you guys how to do that, take note of the orientation of your leaf packs. Look at each side and pay attention to what's the front, what's the rear, and what's inside and outside, and pay attention to the direction those bolts are going on, both on the shackle and the front mount over here too. Alright, the first step in removing your leaf pack is going to be disconnecting your leaf pack from your axle, and in order to do that you have to remove your U-bolt and base plate and bump stop. Yours might look a little bit different than mine. I'm running an aftermarket U-bolt flip kit and bump stop from AccuTune Off-Road, so all of my stuff is going to be up here, but if you're still running the factory one, everything's going to be on the bottom for you, which means it's going to be easier to access with an impact. To remove this, all you're going to do is remove these 4 nuts using a 22mm socket. Like I said, an impact, if you have one, from the bottom should only take a second. Unfortunately for me, everything's up here, so I can't fit my impact in here, so I'm going to be using a 22mm socket and a breaker bar to get these off. Next, locate your shackle. We're going to start by loosening the upper shackle bolt right here, but we're not going to remove it all the way. We kind of can't. To do that, all you're going to use is a 19mm wrench to slide in between the hanger and the shackle right here. Grab a hold of that head and use a 19mm socket with an impact just to loosen up that nut. Like I said, we're not going to remove it quite yet. We're just going to get it loosened up. Next, using the same 19mm socket and 19mm wrench, locate the lower shackle bolt, and we can go ahead and remove that one completely. Now locate the front mounting bolt on the front side of the leaf pack here. Using a 19mm socket, a 19mm wrench, we're going to go ahead and remove this as well. This one can sometimes be a pain in the butt to get out, so it may require you using the jack to adjust the height of the axle, using a pry bar, or using a hammer and punch to get this thing out. So let's give it a shot. I'm actually going to use a 19mm swivel socket to get this out so I can fit my impact in. All right, now that you've got those bolts out, go ahead and set them to the side because we'll be reusing them later. We're good to take the leaf pack out now. I've got enough travel in my shock to lower the axle enough to clear the leaf pack out of here, but it may be necessary for you to remove your lower shock mount bolt down here on the bottom so that way you can lower the axle even more. These things are really heavy, so be careful when doing this. You don't want this to tip over and fall either on you or on your shock shaft and damaging your shock shaft. So we just have to be really careful when doing this. I've got Deaver Stage 3s, so like I said, these things are super heavy, and I'm going to be attempting to do this by myself. It may help to have an extra set of hands. I don't have that, so wish me luck. All right, it's out. Let's set this to the side. Now that the leaf pack's out, go ahead and remove this upper shackle bolt and toss that old shackle to the side since we won't be needing it anymore. Alright guys, now for the fun part, we're going to work on removing the old hangers from the truck's frame. As I mentioned previously, there's several different ways you can do this. I'm going to be using two separate methods, one here on the passenger side and another one on the driver's side. And at the end, I'll let you know which one I found to be the easiest. The first method I'll be using is to chisel away the 4 rivets and then hammer out the bodies. To do this, I'm going to use a hammer drill with a chisel bit and a hammer and punch. An air hammer would definitely be ideal for this situation, but I don't have access to that at the moment, so this will have to do. Each hanger has 4 rivets, 2 up here at the top and 2 down here at the bottom. The 2 top rivets can be punched out once the heads are cut. This one might be a little more difficult to do just because I've got this support brace here for the rear bumper. So I guess I'll try to get to this in any way that I can. But the 2 lower rivets have welded washers on the inside, kind of attached to the subframe support underneath here, and I'll give you guys a close-up on that in just a second. And those may need to be drilled out. To make this process smoother, I'm going to take an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel And I'm going to make little relief cuts in the shape of a cross on each rivet, just to make it easier to chisel away. The top rivets won't be a problem to access. However, the lower rivets might be a little difficult to do that and fit an angle grinder in here. So I'll probably have to cut away the hanger right around here and drop it off, just so that way I can access these lower rivets. The second method I'm going to use is drilling out the rivets. To do this, I'm going to use a center punch to punch a little starter dimple in the head of the rivet. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch drill bit to drill a pilot hole all the way through the rivet, and then I'm going to use a 1/2 inch drill bit to start drilling off the head. Once that head's off, I'll take a hammer and punch the rivets through the frame. Now this can all be done by hand using a hammer and a chisel, but that makes it an extreme pain in the butt, and I can only imagine how long that would take. All right, now we're up underneath the truck where the spare tire goes, and I'm going to show you guys what exactly I'm talking about here. So here's the subframe support where your spare tire would sit, and this goes from frame to frame. So we don't want to cut this or damage this. The rivets sit right here. So you've got the hanger, the frame, and then the subframe, and the rivet kind of crunches them all together. So what I would recommend doing is grabbing a pair of vice grips before you attempt any of these methods and kind of clamp them all together. Be sure not to get near the rivet, but you want to clamp all three of these together to kind of keep them in place to prevent from bending that subframe when you're punching it out and drilling it out. There you go. As I always stress with any installation that I do where flying hot metal is involved, always wear your PPE, hand protection, eye protection, most importantly, and ear protection. If you care about that, I'm already half deaf, so I'm not even going to bother with that. I'm getting pretty close to this, so a face shield would be preferred, but all I've got are these, so something's better than nothing. Anyways, let's get to cutting. All right, I'm not sure how well you can see this, but the old hanger came off, finally. I'm gonna tell you right now, there is really no one good method that I am prepared for taking these off. Either way you look at it, this absolutely sucks. It's gonna take forever to do.
So I still have to get these rivets through the frame. Not exactly sure how I'm going to do that, but this is just the first side. I still haven't even started on the second side. So best of luck to you guys. If you have an air hammer, air chisel, you're probably good. If you've got a really strong drill and some really good drill bits, you're probably good. I don't have any of those things, so I'm sitting here struggling to get the rest of these off. So I'm probably going to end up having to drill these out or something. I don't have a good angle to hammer these, really, with the bed here and my high clearance rear bumper here. So I'm going to try to get out what I can, but at least the hanger's off, so this should be fun.
All right. I'm going to go a little bit off script here when I say that absolutely sucked. That kicked my butt. A couple hours later, I finally got those 4 rivets off. Started off using method 1, which was air hammer with a chisel attachment and punch attachment, neither of which I had. Don't have an air hammer, don't have those attachments. So I used a hammer drill with a chisel attachment and drill bit. That did not work at all. I ended up having to grind the rivet heads off and switching over to method 2 and trying to drill them out. The drill that I had probably wasn't that powerful, or the drill bits weren't good enough, so I was unprepared for that. Fortunately, I have an amazing next door neighbor, Matt, who also happens to be a mechanic, who lended me his slightly more powerful drill and better drill bits, and I knocked those rivets out in no time. So moving on to method 2, when I do the driver's side, I'm not even going to bother cutting off the lower half of that hanger. I'm just going to go straight into method 2, which is center punching those rivet heads using a 1/4 inch drill bit to drill a pilot hole all the way through it, then switching over to a 1/2 inch drill bit to knock the head off. Once I've got the head off, I can take a punch and a hammer and knock it right out, which is basically what I did once I got those nicer drill bits from my neighbor. Anyways, side note, go ahead and take a 1/2 inch drill bit and bore out those holes where the 4 rivets were, just to get them nice and smooth for when we put the new bolts in there to get the new hangers on. Also, if your frame looks anything like mine, you're going to have a little bit of surface rust on there, so I'm going to have to clean that off. I'm going to use a little wire wheel here to get that rust off. You can use a wire brush, something. And then once I've got that rust off, I'm going to go over it with Steel It, which is basically stainless steel in a can. It's going to work a whole lot better preventing rust down the road than, say, black Rust-Oleum or black spray paint. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, once you've got that rust knocked off and you've got everything prepped, go ahead and grab your hanger and your corresponding hardware, which is going to be 5 of the 1.5 inch zinc bolts with washer and nut, and also grab a little teardrop shaped washer too. I'm going to try to show you where exactly this goes before I get it under there. So basically, that teardrop shape, the larger side is going to go on the frontmost hole, and the smaller side is going to go on the middle part, basically on the other side of that frame, and act as a washer. So let's go ahead and get this bad boy on there. I'm excited to see what it looks like. Putting these in here, we're just going to hand tighten the nuts on here first. We're not going to tighten them down all the way. And you're only going to do the rear one up top and the 2 bottom ones, and we'll save this one,
these two right here for the last, with that washer on the back side. All right, using a couple of 19mm sockets or a 19mm socket and a wrench, we're gonna go ahead and tighten down these bottom ones first. Rago Fab did not include any torque specs for in their instructions, so we're just gonna get these as tight as we can without overdoing it. Now, with those three on, go ahead and take your teardrop washer and set it on the other side of the frame in this orientation right here. Get these bolts in. All right, that sucker's on there. Yeah, that ain't going nowhere.
Moving our attention back to the leaf spring, we're going to go ahead and assemble the shackle and reattach it to the leaf pack. Starting with the grease fitting, go ahead and tighten that into place on your shackle. Start by hand tightening it. And then I'm using a 1/4 inch ratchet with a 9/32 socket to go ahead and tighten this thing down. Just don't over tighten it. We don't need it super tight on there. All right, it's on. While we're at it, let's go ahead and add some grease to it as well. Rago Fab recommends a lithium-based grease or a silicone-based grease with PTFE additive for these. I'm going to be using some Super Lube silicone lubricating grease with Syncolin, which is basically a type of PTFE. It's nothing crazy expensive like Prothane, but it'll work just fine. So let's go ahead and get that in there. Ooh, there we go. Got it in there. One pump for good measure. All right, go ahead and disconnect it. So you've got that grease on there. You're just gonna take it and rub it all along the poly bushing here. There we go, just like that. Okay. There we go. Now we'll go ahead and install the shackle onto the rear of the leaf pack. Go ahead and grab one of those factory bolts that you removed from the truck earlier, clean off the threads and get the bolt nice and cleaned up. We will be reusing this to install the shackle onto the leaf pack. So keep in mind, as I mentioned previously, you need to remember which side is rear, which one's front, which one's inside, which side is outside to the leaf pack. Because when we reinstall this shackle on here and put the bolt in, the head of the bolt needs to be facing the inside of the truck, and the nut and washer needs to be facing the outside towards the wheel. Just like that. We're not going to tighten this all the way down right now. We're just going to get it hand tightened, and when we reinstall it back onto the truck, then we'll torque everything down.
We are ready to get this leaf pack installed back on the vehicle. As I mentioned previously, it helps having a second set of hands to do this, especially if you're running super heavy Deaver Stage 3 leaf packs like I am. So I'm going to try to get this maneuver around the shock and get this reinstalled on the vehicle. The most important part is just getting this rear shackle in place first. That will prevent it from tipping like it's doing right now. It may require lowering or raising the axle. You may have to hammer it in place. You may have to use a pry bar. So it's not fun to do. It's pretty difficult. Go ahead and have your hardware on standby. Hardware being one of your factory bolts that you removed earlier, like we reinstalled here on the upper shackle mount. And the bolt washer and nut that Rago Fab provides. Let's get this on here. See if we can get this in there now. This bolt, on the other hand, can go back in this direction, unlike this one that has to go the opposite direction. Alright, that was a doozy. Next step, before we tighten down any of these bolts, is going to be getting the U-bolts, base plate, and bump stop back on there. All right, again, using a 22mm socket, when we tighten these down, be sure to tighten them down in an even manner. So zigzagging and making sure that each one has about an even amount of threads above it, so you're not tightening one more than the other. Once you've gotten these things evenly tightened down, we're going to torque these down to 80 pounds. Now go to the upper shackle bolt, and we're going to torque this down to 89 pounds. Don't torque this one down yet. Now go to the front leaf pack mount and tighten that one down to 89 pounds. All right, now we're going to take the nut that Rago Fab provided and attach it to the lower shackle bolt down here. It's a little hard to access. They provided this little pocket for it right here. So in order to screw it on without it dropping down, I can't really fit my fingers down in there. So I'm going to use a shallow 19mm socket with a little extension just to kind of hand tighten it on for now. Okay, that's hand tightened on. Alright guys, after you've gotten everything reinstalled and the upper shackle bolt torqued down, the front mounting bolt torqued down, and the U-bolts torqued down, once you've got the wheels reinstalled and torqued down and on the ground, only then will you be good to torque down this bottom shackle bolt right here. You've got the little pocket right here, which is where I'm going to put the socket and the torque wrench, and then you've got the head of the bolt over here, which is where I'm going to put a 19mm wrench. So let's go ahead and torque this down real quick. Put that in there like that. And you're torquing that down to 89 pounds as well. Now, take your diamond cover plate and your provided button head cap screws, and we're going to go ahead and hand tighten these on as a cover plate. Okay. Now just take a 4mm Allen socket or a 4mm Allen key and tighten those down. All right, we're good to go.
Okay guys, and that is how you install Rago Fabrication shackle hangers on a 2nd or 3rd gen Tacoma. If you're fairly mechanically proficient, you can expect this installation to take around 6 hours. If not, you can expect it to take even longer than that. This is by no means an easy installation, but hours later I finally got it done, and I'm ready to put these bad boys to the test and hit the trails. If you guys enjoyed watching this video or found this video helpful, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. And if you enjoy watching content similar to this, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. As always, guys, have fun, be safe, tread lightly, and I will see you guys out on the trails. Thanks for watching.